Welcome new and old friends. I just have a couple things to say and then the stories will begin. Before you drift off into the dream realm, please remember to like, subscribe, share, and comment. If you'd like to find out about my social links, my website, how to help the channel, check the description box. Now turn off your lights, make sure your doors and windows are locked. It's time to dream. Shadow People Experience by 3 AM Dream. Some reference points for the story. I'm 29 years old and a quadriplegic wheelchair bound due to an accident when I was 14, leaving me paralyzed with no feeling or movement below my nipples. After years of consideration to make my life easier and stress-free, I decided to get a colostomy. It made sense for me to do to make ease of life easier. For this surgery, I would need to do a 48-hour fast before my colonoscopy. And the next day, I would have my colonoscopy and would still not have any food up until the surgery. I roughly went 4 days without eating. Day of the surgery. Very thick, foggy weather. Besides my surgery getting pushed back 3 hours, the surgery went well, and I awoke and was conscious and everything went as planned. I would need to be hospitalized for that evening and the next day, and possibly a third depending on how the nurses felt. That night, as my day wound down and my visitors would leave, I would spend the evening watching TV on my phone until I got tired enough to try and fall asleep. I can't feel that part of my body, so I wasn't in any pain, but they were giving me a small dose of pain medication called Dilaudid just to keep me comfortable and help me get some sleep. My room was dark with just the light from my IV machine and the crack of the blinds from my window illuminating the room from the parking lot street lights from the hospital. I would have had some trouble sleeping that night, mostly feeling like I would sleep 5 or 10 minutes and then suddenly just awaken, but then would quickly fall back asleep just for the same process to happen again and again. This would go on until 3 a.m. I would eventually fall asleep once again, but then I suddenly woke, but this time it felt like I was awakened for a purpose, or I was being watched. The visit. When I woke up laying in my hospital bed, something out of my right peripheral caught my attention. I would turn my head to the right and see a very tall, at least 10 feet tall, silhouette sitting in the hospital chair next to my window. Sitting down, this figure was so tall his head was almost to the ceiling. I would close my eyes and reopen them, as if to make sure my vision was clear, as I didn't know what I was looking at. After doing that, the tall, dark figure was still sitting there, and it seemed like he was looking at me, although he had no eyes or facial features. Oddly enough, I was not scared, nor did I feel uncomfortable. Almost quite the opposite, as it almost seemed like it was there to comfort me. I would look at the figure and say, "Hello?" in the fraction of a second, almost as if I missed him making a move. He would stand at the side of my bed, towering over me, looking down. It's at this point when I almost skip time, and next thing you know, I'm laying flat on my back still, but in a room that is completely white with no walls, no source of light, but very well illuminated. I seem to be laying on a piece of hard rock, similar to granite. When I look up, there are now 2 black figures, both the same size with the same body structure. What was weird is I felt I knew which one had taken me to this new place, and what one I had not had any confrontation with yet. At this point, I'm still very calm and not scared or feeling any harm will be done to me. As I'm laying there, I turn to the first figure and ask him, "Is everything okay?" To which he replies a simple, "Yes," followed by the second figure saying to me, "We are just mending you." Then the first figure would pull a silver dome with bright, shining light beams down over the top of my head. This is where I have my second lapse in time until the dome is pulled away from my face. Once I awaken and turn to the first figure, who I felt I had a better connection with, or possibly just felt like that was who I should be speaking to, I asked him, "What was the purpose of this?" He doesn't answer, but the second figure turns towards me and said, "It is that you have a new purpose." This is where my third lapse of time happens, and I'm floating through the foggy air from outside through my hospital window back into my bed. Almost as soon as I was back in my bed, I was asleep. I would then sleep until 8:30 in the morning, and immediately when I woke up, this is the first thing I thought about. It felt so real, like nothing any dream I had ever had, and I can recall every part of this experience. Immediately, I would Google the definition of mending, a word which I would most likely never use in my life. Definition: repair, something that is broken or damaged. Return to health, heal. Improve an unpleasant situation. After, I would call my wife and tell her the story of what I called being abducted by shadow people. Both of us were really confused on what the meaning of this was, but we both feel it was real and not a dream. I also believe it was not a hallucination based on the pain medicine, as I was on such a low dose and I remember it so vividly. The figures. Both of them were very tall, at least 10 feet, and both were pitch black with no human features I could distinguish other than the shape of their bodies. Although I remember seeing no fingers or nose or any facial features for that matter, it was more or less just a shadow. I don't necessarily know if they talked to me or if I heard their voices telepathically, mainly because there was no mouth. As I stated before, they did not scare me or make me uncomfortable. In fact, it almost felt like I was in a bliss of comfort when I was around them. For some reason, I do feel like the second figure was in charge or the boss, mainly because he seemed to answer for the first figure certain questions, and seemed like he was leading the process. As I stated before, I never saw them walk towards me or necessarily move other than turn their bodies. It almost seemed like the silver dome wasn't even pulled down over my head via arms or anything. Both of the voices were different, but both very monotone. Aftermath. Since having this experience, I have not seen the shadow figures anymore, but the memory is still strong and vivid in my mind, almost as if I am to never forget it. At the time of writing this, it has now been a little over 2 months since this happened. My wife recommends I post on here to see if anyone has any similar situations or may be able to make light of what happened. I did tell my nurse later that day about my experience, and she just said that that's creepy and that most people don't hallucinate off of that pain medicine, especially at the dose I was given. Overall, it wasn't a bad experience, and I actually feel really good about it, and as I stated before, I was not scared or uncomfortable at any moment. Any comments or input is gladly appreciated. Thank you. I just wanted to let you guys know, this person posted this 10 months ago, so as of recording this, it's actually been a year since this happened to them. The gravedigger was told to bury him 8 feet deep, but decided not to because the hospital was no longer looking for bodies. "It wasn't because of the grave robbers," the priest said, crossing himself as he peered to the claw marks across the cemetery grass. My Wholesome Ghost by Enlightened Moron 2025. I have lived in this apartment for almost 3 years now, and I have the world's sweetest prankster of all ghosts. She is a girl. I have first-hand seen this girl and heard her voice. She was frightened by me when I first moved in. My first encounter with her was right on the edge of sleep. I heard a scared girl's voice ask, "Who are you?" I brushed this off as the edge of sleep delusions, things like that. She was very silent for a long time, no activity. At about 6 months of living in this apartment, however, she became mischievous, to say the least. I'm a single man, and I have certain adult objects that are battery-powered. At 3-ish a.m. one morning, she turned it on. I was frightened, and after regaining control of my nerves, I turned it back off. She would do this another 2 times that same night. So I threw that object into the dumpster and said, "Battery malfunction." Just chill, that was an overreaction. Until she also started turning my PC off. This annoyed me something fierce, and after the 3rd time, I angrily told her, "I will cleanse this whole fucking house if you turn it off again." She turned it off again. No problem, I'm overreacting. It was probably the temp of the CPU getting too hot and shutting the PC off. No biggie, it's an easy fix. So I did the maintenance and said ghosts are not real, I'm just being dramatic. Then she started breathing on me when I was trying to go to sleep. Rhythmic, even breaths. No big deal, that creeps me out. I'll just turn the AC off and ensure my window is shut. She still breathes on me. So I took to sleeping with my blanket over my head. Tap, tap, tap. She was tapping the mattress. I still don't have an explanation for this one, but it was always small, annoying stuff. Like my work belt disappearing and then being right back where I left it. The day I knew she didn't want to actually hurt me is when I woke up in the middle of the night, opened my eyes, and saw her face inches from mine. May God strike me down if I am lying. I freaked the fuck out. I sleep with a knife in my reading pillow in the event of a home invasion, and that's what I thought this was. I kicked at her and hit nothing but air, pulled the knife. And she backed away, a surprised expression on her face that turned into what I still think is an apologetic grimace. I blinked, and she was gone. I have never seen her since then. I just remember clothes were modern, jeans and a sweater with shoulder-length straight black hair. When I got a roommate, she stopped all activity. Like she did when I first moved in. My roommate and I stay home through the weekends, both avid gamers. Until today. My roommate's at work and I'm not. We usually have the same schedule as we work at the same place. She gave me a little message today. I was cleaning my bedroom and I was walking out with the trash. She threw a crutch I dragged home from a house party one night on the floor. People will say it probably fell. I have never seen something fall with that much force. It landed a few feet from where I stood against the wall. Like she was telling me, "Take this too." Then, as I was cleaning up some more, she flicked a used Zen at me that was on my desk with enough force to audibly hit my chair. After my room was clean, I began having a panic attack and was sitting on my bed trying to box breathe when she moved the desk chair in front of me left then right. As if to say, "I'm here." Ironically, it calmed me down instead of freaking me out. My roommate just got back. Before I moved out, I wanted to ask him if he had any experiences with her. When I move out, she won't have me to prank anymore, just him. I almost wish I could see that with a bucket of popcorn. "Watch me," read the note attached to the videotape posted through my door. I used to believe I could never kill another person, but now it's the only way to get those images and that sound, oh God, the sound, out of my head. Smelling Things by FastandtheCURIOUS. This might sound stupid, so I apologize, but it's driving me mad. I was getting a strong whiff of cigarette smoke. It will linger for a good 5 to 10 minutes. No one in my flat smokes, none of my neighbors smoke either. I've checked sockets and appliances. We had some bloke out to do a routine check for fire hazards and fire alarms. I asked him about it, and he couldn't find anything that could be causing it. I'll give some more context and explain why I think it could be paranormal. Please bear with. My mom passed away in 2019. She had osteoporosis, COPD, and emphysema. She was a heavy smoker. The doctors told her when she first got diagnosed that she needed to stop. But she never listened, and that's what killed her. Even when she was put on a waiting list for a double lung transplant, she wouldn't stop. She would still be here today if she had followed the doctor's advice and quit. She was heavily into all paranormal. I grew up watching the cheesy ghost shows and talking about the unexplainable with her. It's one of the things we bonded over, and it became somewhat of a special interest of mine. Whenever I smell the smoke, Mom is always the first thing that comes to my mind. It smells like her and the type of fags she used to smoke. The smell seems to follow me around the flat. I thought it might be my mind playing tricks or something, but my dad has even smelled it a couple of times too. The funny and fucked up thing is, the last few years with her were absolute hell. The sicker she became, the more abusive she got to me and Dad. She promised that when she died, she'd haunt us. She wanted to make sure my dad suffered especially. There's been a couple of odd experiences that we haven't been able to explain. We try to joke about it and say, it's Mom coming to get us. My dad's a skeptic, but when these things happen, you can tell he's uneasy about it. Like, for a split second, it really could be Mom setting out to do what she promised. I don't really have anyone to talk to about this. They think it's ridiculous. So, I thought I posted here to get your opinion and to see if anyone else had a similar thing happen.
Taking you with me will only slow us both, and taking different routes increase our odds of survival, said the man to his son.
But it says here not to take an elevator in case of fire, shouted the kid in the wheelchair, but the man was already climbing down the stairs. Unexplained Event in Bakery by extension equals 6415. Just a little backstory. I work in the bakery department for a well-known company. And in my story, there are 3 people involved. My supervisor, we'll call her Lindsay. My coworker, we'll call her Megan. And me. I had just clocked into work at 1:30 p.m. and walked into the back room, got a drink, and saw Lindsay sitting down for her lunch break. I said hi and then walked back to the bakery department. Fast forward to about 2 or 3 p.m. Lindsay was still up front, maybe finishing her break or taking care of some business, and Megan and I were still way in the back in the bakery on the other end of the building. I was walking around after just finishing some tasks when I quickly glanced back at Megan. She was wearing her red shirt and her white hat, kneeling down over the 2 fans that sat next to our 3 big ovens. She seemed to wipe down the fans or something when I noticed Lindsay right next to her with her white hat on and black shirt on. That I had noticed she had on earlier when I first came into work when I saw her on her lunch break. I thought to myself, Okay, Lindsay must be finishing with whatever she was doing up front and came back to the bakery. Not thinking too much of it, I turned back and went on with my next task. Just then, Megan came up to me and asked, "Hey, have you seen Lindsay? I heard her calling her name just a moment ago, but she wasn't there when I looked." And I said, "I thought she was with you by the fans. I just saw her next to you." And she said, "No, I was alone." Feeling spooked, I messaged Lindsay and asked her where she was, to which she replied, "Up front? Why? Is everything all right?" I have no clue what that was. We were both shocked at the moment and were left wondering what just happened. If you guys listening to this have any ideas, please let me know. I asked around the store with people who worked in the bakery, and they have some stories too, such as a shadow figure, things moving, falling, opening/closing, lights turn on and off on their own, and things like that. And it's true, I've seen lights flicker and shadow figures as I worked alone. Before we enter into battle, remember well, they may be large and like the taste of human flesh, but their digestive system doesn't work on human, so take a deep breath, try to get swallowed in one piece, and fight your way out from the inside. I Might Be One Let's Not Meet Person by Ambeir. I'll keep this short. I'm not sure if this post really belongs here. If not, please feel free to take it down. So I'm currently focusing on taking care of myself, therapy, psychologist, things like that. Over the past few years, especially since I had a very toxic relationship, I began noticing certain behavioral patterns I've always had. These didn't really bother me before, but they started to affect my daily life. Since I was young, I felt a bit invisible at school. I remember that even though I did well academically and had high grades, most teachers and students would remember my name and would act surprised when the rankings came in. Many teachers would read my name among the top 3 and ask, "Who is this?" One of the first things I remember doing, which seems strange looking back now, was becoming obsessed with this girl. She was a year ahead of me, Japanese, and seemed really shy. During lunch breaks, I would spend most of my time watching her, noticing who she hung out with, etc. Over time, my interest kept growing until one day I used the lunch break to go into her classroom and look through her things just to find her name. I managed to do it without anyone noticing. I started following her on social media out of nowhere. She didn't even know we went to the same school. We talked for a while. I even told her I was in another class and that I was interested in her. But I never explained how I found her profile. I just said something like, "Oh, we have mutual friends." I made sure to actually have mutual friends before sending her a friend request. I remember one day I decided out of the blue to tell her things about herself that I shouldn't have known because we've never talked about them. Her dress, old blogs she had, the church she attended. I started this as a way to mess with her a little, but I loved how she reacted, slightly frightened, so I kept going until she was actually a bit terrified. After that, it felt too strange to maintain any kind of friendship. I'd even followed her home once before, and she noticed. At the time, it didn't seem like anything too problematic, just kind of weird stuff young people do. Fast forward to today. I'm older now, I have a job, live alone, and overall have a pretty stable life. But I still deal with mental health issues, which I didn't understand the cause or condition of until recently.
I've had a few relationships, most of which didn't end well. Some because of things I did, others because of things people did to me. I remember feeling a strong impulse for revenge against those who broke my heart, fantasizing about stalking them, making them feel afraid, etc. I won't go into detail about every relationship, but the person I ended up dating had serious mental health issues as well. Borderline personality disorder, depression, and more. She was very wealthy, so our lives were very different. She was also younger. Every now and then, she would bring up the idea of opening our relationship or mentioning how she and her friends thought she should enjoy life more before settling down. We began a circle of dating and breaking up. Everything started spiraling, and every time we got back together, the relationship felt more and more distorted. Eventually, we both cheated on each other, and the relationship ended for good. But for some reason, my broken mind couldn't let it go. I was so hurt by everything that had happened, and this time, it was much harder to resist those impulses towards violence, stalking, and instilling fear. I seemed like a normal person at work, in the office, but in my mind, there was a voice that really wanted vengeance. At some point, it became unbearable. After work, I started hanging around places near her house, supermarkets, parks, any spot we got together. I made sure she knew I was or had been there. Doing this made me feel better, less anxious. My mind would feel at peace for a while. We never talked directly about it, nor did she confront me. Eventually, I managed to get over it and started controlling these impulses again until they disappeared. When I began treatment and started talking about all this and other issues, like my lack of empathy, struggling with socialization, and mimicking emotions I didn't really feel, I began to see how messed up this behavior was. Now I'm in treatment, and I'm close to a diagnosis, though since it's not 100% confirmed, I don't think it's helpful to share it here. If you're feeling things like this, seek help. I'm not the type of person who wants to give in to bad thoughts or impulses. I want to be a good person despite everything. Apologies to anyone I may have hurt with my actions. Thank you for listening.
I didn't think you'd be so small-minded over a 16-year age gap, the man said to his mother after introducing Sandra. Son, she replied, that's the woman who put you up for adoption. Creepy Encounter by Sydney. This happened back in 1986 when I was working for a bank in the bookkeeping department in Richmond, Virginia. Where I worked in bookkeeping, we called statements rendering. We kept all the personal and corporate checks filed there. On the 1st and 2nd of each month, we had to mail out, by hand, all of the corporate statements. Everyone in the department, no matter your regular job, had to help that day, and we sometimes didn't get out until 8 or 9 that night. Usually we got an hour for lunch, but on those days, we got 30 minutes. I can't remember the exact day this story takes place, but it was in 1986, right after we bombed Libya, so I'm thinking April or May. My friend Em and I were discussing what to do for lunch because, as I have stated before, we only had 30 minutes that day. We decided to go to Popeyes because it wasn't too far away and thought we could make it in 30 minutes. So that's what we did. My friend was driving because I didn't have a car at the time and took the bus everywhere. The bus system in Richmond was really good. We got to Popeyes and got in line to order. We were staying there as a guy came in and got in right behind us in line. He was staring a hole right through me. I turned back around and stared straight ahead. Em and I kind of looked at each other with a what's wrong with this guy look. We got our food and went and sat down. Em sat down across from me and whispered that when I got to sit down, that guy's eyes followed me the whole time I was walking back to the table. That's when I started getting worried. He came and sat down at the table behind ours, and I was facing him. The whole time, he just sat there and stared at me. I would try and sit so M's head was blocking his view of me, but he would move over to continue to stare. We had to sit there and wait until he finally got up and left. After he got up and left, we laughed about it, but the laughter didn't last long. He didn't leave. He was waiting for us in the parking lot in his car. As I stated before, it was right after we had bombed Libya. He looked Middle Eastern, and I started thinking we were going to be kidnapped. We decided to walk back to where the arcade games were just to see if we were being paranoid, and we weren't. He drove over to where he knew we were. Now we started panicking. Our time for lunch was running out, and we didn't want this guy following us back to work. So we went to the payphone there. This was before cell phones, and called our office to let them know what was going on. Our boss was at lunch, so we had to leave a message. After that, we stood there trying to decide what to do to lose this guy. The parking lot had just one row of spaces, and there was an entrance out to the main street, another one to the back going out to the parking lot where there was a back way to work. By this time, he had pulled his car out and was facing the front entrance to the main road. I told my friend to back up and go out the other way through that parking lot, and we can go back to work that way. That's what we did. We saw him zoom out the front way and try to find out which way we went, but he never did. We got back late and told them what happened. They all burst out laughing and said it sounded like something out of Miami Vice, and then I burst out crying. My friend yelled at them that there was nothing funny about it. This is my story, the day I thought I was going to be kidnapped. As a necrophiliac, I've never been this attracted to a living woman before. I blushed at his joke, my heart fluttering. It was only when the hiccup started that I realized I had forgotten to go to my yearly pacemaker checkup. Potential Home Invasion by GossyGirl. Years ago, when I was pregnant, we were just getting ready to go to bed, and it was late, about 1:30 a.m. This woman knocked on the door, and my husband answered. She was clearly high and jittery and looking around everywhere. She asked if she could use the toilet. My husband said no, this is not a public restroom. We both got a really bad vibe off of her. She was quite a big woman, and clearly something wasn't right with her. She started to try and open our security door, rattling the handle, but we've always been very conscious of keeping it locked the minute we walk in. My husband told her to go away, and he shut the door. She started banging on the door, screaming that she needed to use the toilet. My husband opened the door again and told her to piss off or he was going to call the cops. She stopped, froze, and for about 20 seconds stood there, staring at us, and then she turned around and walked away. We turned off all the lights and looked through the blinds and saw her next door talking to two people. I said to my husband that that was a setup for a home invasion, and he agreed. The thing was, I'd actually seen this woman around before quite a few times, so she could have known I was heavily pregnant, and that would make us a good target, because we'd be more compliant. People have a tendency to be more compliant when they're trying to protect their family. I reckon she followed me home. I've never seen her again. Edit to add. Thought it would be good to let you know that this was in Australia. Halfway through cleaning out the large storage locker I'd purchased, I found a box containing hundreds, if not thousands, of pictures of me and my family taken from afar. I was so disturbed by the discovery that I didn't grasp the significance of the Polaroid of me opening the locker, taken from inside the unit with the word "soon" written on it. Someone nearly broke into my house. By Stay Affectionate 5987. I never wanted to tell this story to anyone for years. I don't know why, but here I am now. I was 16 years old, and sometimes I would spend time at my grandmother's for privacy. My grandmother lived alone, and many people in her building didn't know about me. The floor where my grandmother lived had 2 more apartments, one of which was rented out but was vacant at the time, and the other had some inheritance issues, so no one was using it. My grandmother went on a trip, which everyone in the building knew about. They have some Facebook group. And I wanted to be alone, so I slept alone in the apartment. The first night went okay, but around 3 in the morning, while I was talking to some friends, I heard a strange sound at the door. I was wearing headphones, and at that moment, everything became quiet, both in the game and in the conversation with my friends. I went to check and I heard the sound of the lock. I looked through the peephole and saw a man trying to break in. He had a scarf over his face and a cap. He was using some tools to break the lock, and then he opened one of the latches. Thank God I had 2 latches, otherwise who knows what would have happened. Now, I could have reacted much better, but I went to get my katana. It was hanging on the wall in my room, and I stood by the door. I heard him trying to break the other lock, and I shouted, "Who are you?" He froze, but he continued trying to break the lock. "If you come in here, I'll stab you with the katana." He continued until I said, "The police are already on their way." I lied. The man just walked away. The man didn't even live in our building because after 2 months, I got to know everyone, and no one moved out during that time. Weirdo, please, let's not meet again. Update, someone is watching me. There hasn't been any activity since the night after I originally posted. I was on a phone call the very next night with a friend when I noticed someone staying outside, completely shrouded in darkness. I proceeded to talk loudly about how some creep was watching me and they better watch out. Stupid, yes, but it seemed to work because all was quiet after that. Or so I thought. Tonight was one of my oldest friends' last night in town, so I was out till 9:30 p.m., drove 2 friends home, and then myself. Since it was so early, I wasn't that worried, but still alert. I drove up the side of the street he hit on last time, even though it was out of the way, and saw nothing out of the ordinary. I noticed one of the new houses that had been built had its lights on, which I didn't think much of in the moment. Fast forward an hour, and I started hearing a weird, loud banging sound across the way. I know it's risky, but I'm not letting some asshole dictate my comfort, and I've been watching for activity/pretending so I maybe catch them. So I've been keeping my window open as usual. Hence why it was dumb to razz him the other night by talking about someone watching me. But I digress. It stopped, so I wrote it off. Big mistake. Shortly after, I started hearing banging again, but this time I could actually feel it. It was coming from my house. I was genuinely freaked out, like Knives Out status, but much more cowardly. Cowering on my bedroom floor with my ear pressed to the door and knife in hand. It was a strange, hollow sound that didn't seem like it was the front door. It wasn't. I once again called 911, describing what's happening and thinking they probably were going to write it off because I sound crazy. I still feel in shock because this only just happened. Thankfully, the kind dude on the line definitely took me seriously and said someone would be on their way. For the record, the police department is 3 minutes drive down from my house. I ended up tiptoeing downstairs to see, and once again felt my heart stop. I went to the front door, ducked down, and there wasn't anyone at the front door. Then the banging starts again, and I can tell how close it is. I got to the side window that overlooks the garage, and there's when I saw him, dressed in black, hood pulled far over his face, banging wildly on the garage door with a fucking crowbat. I honestly don't know why he wasn't using the crowbar to break in, but I'm super glad he didn't, as the door inside the garage that leads into the house is always left unlocked. To say I panicked is a vast understatement. I nearly pissed myself, which I think is understandable. I'm just standing there, peeking out the window, watching this guy wail on my garage door with a crowbar, thinking how fucking unhinged he must be and how much I want the cops to just get there now, when, just like before, he runs off. I quite literally just got done giving a report to the cops that showed up. My family was woken up and had to talk to them as well, as they are the homeowners. And now they're both so freaked out that my dad just ordered 4 exterior cameras to monitor the house. I don't think it's over yet. This man has some reason he's targeting my house, possibly me, since he started out by watching outside my window. So, to this man, you better hope we never meet. I have a crowbar too. And as of recording this, that was the last update from OP, which they posted this over a year ago. So, hopefully the intruder never came back and found out OP had their own crowbar. After trips to the bathroom and removing their boots and clothes, the escape pod still refused to launch, its system declaring it's 3.5 kilograms overweight in satisfying the prediction fuel/distance ratio. The girl in the corner looked up at everyone staring at her and started cradling her bump. Disappearing Man in Red by writer Boku3. I recently found this sub by accident, and I'm glad I did. It proves we're not crazy, nor is it legendarily rare to have any of these experiences. Me, my best friend, and my die-hard materialistic atheist family have had so many glitch in the matrixes that I would need to write more than 10 posts to describe them all. We have all failed to explain each and every one of these events, and mentioning them in a family conversation is sort of taboo. Fortunately, this is not the case with my lifelong best friend. Here's an early example that my friend and I had about 15 years ago. My birthday fire camp, we left our group of friends and went for a walk in the woods. It's a forest that we know pretty well, having played here every day since we could walk, to talk privately about some stuff that had been going on in our lives lately. After an hour, it was getting cold, so we turned around to go back to the fire camp. As we were walking and chatting casually, we saw a man in a red jacket walking slowly down the trail about 100 meters ahead of us. Nothing out of the ordinary, as this place is full of hikers. Since he walked slowly, we got closer to him with each step. When we were about 4 meters behind him, preparing to pass him on his left side, he approached a thick tree that crossed the path and disappeared from our view for a brief second. 5 steps later, so about 3 seconds, we went behind the tree and, well, there was nobody. Long 200 meters straight road ahead, and muddy hills on the sides and no sign of a living soul. This man in red disappeared, which is impossible even if he was a Hitson Bolt at his peak or Spider-Man and jumped into the bushes. We stopped and looked at each other. What the hell? Where did he go? We started looking for this guy, thinking he's playing with us by running around the tree or whatever else came to mind. But nothing made sense. No footsteps in the mood either. We were desperate to find him and couldn't do this for like 10 minutes. Finally, we started laughing hysterically, saying it was impossible. Eventually, we returned to the camp and told our friends about this event. As I know this is not an uncommon type of story, the reason why I chose it is because there is no logical explanation other than a group hallucination. Me and my friend were sober. Thank you for listening and have a great Sunday. Please, my child only just turned 14. The woman pleaded desperately. Ma'am, we told you, this bunker is only for children 13 and younger, replied the officer, shutting the door as the explosions got louder. Reappearing Shoes? By Ashley Marie 096. I was reading through these stories here and was reminded of this story I still have no explanation for. This happened about 5 years ago, but I'll never forget how insanely confused I was. I also want to note that I'm not a stranger to glitches happening and have witnessed cars disappearing with nowhere to have gone, items disappearing and reappearing in the most obvious places, things like that. So, the story. I was on a camping trip with my family in Biloxi, Mississippi, and we took a drive to the beach. We parked in a parking lot and had to cross a busy street before coming up to the wooden bridge/path that led to the sand. As me and my family approached the end of the path, all of the beachgoers had their shoes lined up against the railing. I remember slipping out of my shoes and hoping they wouldn't be stolen or accidentally taken by someone else, as they were pretty generic and, as I stated, everyone's were all piled together. Me and my family went on our beach day, went swimming, things like that. And I know for a fact no one from our little group left to go back to the car, and everyone stayed together the whole time. Not only that, but my siblings were too young to cross the street alone at that time, and my dad has never pulled pranks. As we were leaving and approaching the pile of shoes, lo and behold, my shoes were gone. They were a cheap pair of flip-flops, so I wasn't broken-hearted, but was quite annoyed that I had to walk across the busy street and through the parking lot barefooted. I remember stepping on rocks the whole way and mildly complaining because it was quite painful. Then, when I got back to the car, my shoes were neatly placed under my car door, as if I had opened the door, placed my feet on the ground, and just slipped out of them. If it were a prank, it couldn't have been done by my family, so the random prankster would have had to know 1, which shoes were mine, 2, which car was mine, and 3, which door I had gotten out of. and I know for a fact I didn't leave them there due to how uncomfortable the walk was barefoot, as well as having the thought that I hoped my shoes wouldn't go missing in the pile. I was happy to have them back, but totally annoyed it wasn't before the miserable walk across the rocks. Also, a side note from 242, this is my second recording because the first one oddly glitched. I thought it was fitting since these are glitch in the Matrix stories. The teacher unlocked the room-sized time capsule with a smile, promising the students a glimpse into the lives of those who lived 50 years ago. Instead, the vault released a suffocating gas, and as the students clawed at their melting faces, the teacher calmly said, "This time, we're the memories they'll find." Where is their son? By Exciting Word 8645. We are Catholic, so we usually go to church every weekend. Our church is small and we know most of the people there because we see them every Sunday. We had been going there for the past 3 years. Anyway, so there's this family there. A husband, a wife, and their kids. We always see them in the kids' room where we go with our kid every Sunday. For the longest time, I always thought this family had 2 sons. 2 little boys around 2 to 4, and the other around 6 to 9. I remember the older boy looked a lot like the younger boy, except his hair was neatly parted, and obviously he looked older. I always knew they had 2 boys. Sometimes the youngest would play with our kid, while the other would play in the other room with the dad. The dad hates coming to church, so usually he makes an excuse to go play in the room, but be on his phone. So he would always be there while the oldest was there, and the youngest would stay with his mom sometimes, playing with my kid. Anyways, the lady had been pregnant for a while around the same time I got pregnant. Due to complications, I ended up having to be hospitalized for months after my recovery took so long. I lost my baby at birth, and I had a really hard time mentally after that. It's been a year since, and after therapy and a lot of support, I've been able to get my strength back, emotionally and physically. Anyways, I decided to go back to church. I saw the lady with her daughter and 1 son. Where was the other one? After Mass, I went to the car and said to my husband, "Her daughter's so beautiful, but where's her other son?" My husband responded, "What other son?" "The other one, they had 2. "No, they only had 1. My husband looked at me like I was crazy. I shrugged it off that day, but the next Sunday that came, I didn't see their other son. So now, for the past few weeks, I kept thinking about the other son. I'm so confused. I swear I saw 2 boys. We all got COVID now and been in quarantine, and I haven't been back to church again. But I keep thinking about the older son that doesn't exist. I keep going back to remembering where I did and go wrong, where did the confusion begin. But I swear I saw them all the time. It couldn't have been someone else's kid because I would have seen him in church again like we usually did. Also, the kid looked so much like his brother. Like, they looked alike. I saw them in the same room. I saw them with different jackets. I saw them interacting with each other. I have such a clear picture in my head of the older brother, like I saw the kid every weekend. How could I forget how he looked? I'm so confused. I feel crazy. I'm not making this up. There's nothing that would benefit out of posting this here other than people are probably going to say I have mental issues. Nothing like this has happened to me before. I'm so confused. Update. The daughter was not born yet. I know, I'm terrible at storytelling, but the daughter was born after I came back from the hospital. That's not the weird part because the lady was pregnant before I left to the hospital. No, there isn't a way that the son would have died as we would have heard of it because we would have had mass for him, and when someone's child passes away or when someone passes away in general in the church, everyone finds out about it. We get an email that goes to everyone and we hold mass for them. We also are told to just be cautious and careful when we speak to the family. People are having theories that maybe he was a ghost, which I don't know, and yes, I will try and ask the lady if she ever had a miscarriage or if her first pregnancy was her son, the younger boy. People are saying that I probably jumped into a different dimension and had passed away in the hospital. This is a theory that I'm not ready to get into because it's very touchy since I did almost die in the hospital, hence why I was hospitalized for so long, months, with my child. I had an emergency C-section and the whole experience is very fresh and traumatic for me right now. So I'm still going through healing. But thank you everyone for sharing and introducing me to such theories. I'm just not ready to get into that yet. The theory that maybe the boy had transitioned to a daughter would only make sense if the daughter was the same age as the boy, but the daughter is a baby. She was born during the time I was in the hospital. The boy that I saw that was there has been there since I started going to the church, and he was around 6 years old when we first started going there. I also want to point out that some people are saying to ask around or to go into the records since the Catholic Church is very good at holding records of people, especially like baptism records. I don't want to do that just because I already feel weird enough asking her specific questions. I feel that would be just very weird to just go to the office and start asking for her family's information without a valid reason. Especially for the fact that I strongly have memories of her having another son. I feel like that would be seen as stalking or just plain creepy. I don't want to be seen as a crazy lady. Someone else said that maybe they were fostering a child, which could be possible, but I really doubt it. Another thing people have mentioned was maybe it was a niece or a nephew, which was possible, but I don't have anything to confirm that. I will be asking the son the next time I go to church. As I said, right now we are quarantined. But I will update once again after I ask their son. I will ask him if he has a brother or if he had a cousin that came to church with him. I'm starting to lean a bit more towards the fact that maybe he was a ghost because of the comment I got asking if he've ever interacted with an adult, and to think back, I never really saw them interact with the child directly. The father would be in the playroom hanging out with their son while the son would be playing around. I don't know why the father would be in the playroom if the son never existed. Was the father just hanging around the playroom by himself? That would be kind of weird, but even though he never directly interacted with the older son, I still find it strange that he would be in the playroom by himself. Everything is really strange for me, and I'm trying to wrap my head around it all. I did ask my son, and my son said no, he doesn't have another brother or kid that looks like him. Thank you everyone for trying to help me out. I appreciate it. Latest and last update. I went back to the church today after a long quarantine, so it's not an interesting update, but she does have an older son. When we asked her about her older son, I guess she didn't hear us correctly and said that she didn't have an older son. Her son sits far away on the other side of the church with another family because he wants to sit with his friends. His son is actually indeed 6 years old and will be turning 7 soon. My husband has a horrible memory, so he didn't remember the son. This is a big facepalm moment as I was spinning around in my head thinking I was going insane because I swore I saw an older brother. But she does have another son. It was just a huge misunderstanding that led to me thinking I was going insane. Thanks everyone for your comments and theories.
The man in black by the river handed it to me, my son said, handing me the heavy briefcase full of $100 bills. He then asked me, "Daddy, what's a soul?"
I ate a piece of bread that didn't exist by CattleCat357. Okay, so a few years ago, I woke up and went to the kitchen where my mom was. I was wide awake and I sat down at that table, my plate in front of me. On the other side of the room, my mom was at the stove cooking these tortilla bread things for me, like she'd been doing for the past few days. Almost immediately after sitting down and waiting, she walked up to me, silent, and put a single tortilla on the plate. She then walked up to the counter where she continued making more. I thanked her for it, and before I ate it, I looked at it. I paid attention to how it looked, like the parts where it was browned and had not been, and its shape. It was perfect. I ate it, leaving no trace of crumbs or anything on my plate. I then said thank you again, and said it tasted perfectly. She didn't respond. I assumed because she was still busy making more tortillas for me. I kept talking to her about how perfect the tortilla was. She didn't really say anything. Finally, she said that she didn't give me a tortilla yet. I didn't believe her. I thought she was trying to trick me. But then I stood up and walked over to the counter, and she hadn't even finished making any yet. She hadn't even finished forming the dough. I was completely confused, and I still am. I had no proof that she had even given it to me, and she said she didn't respond when I first thanked her and said how good it tasted because she didn't know what I was talking about. To her, I just randomly said that, and she never had even walked over to me yet or finished making anything. I sat down confused, and then I stood back up again, and at that moment, she had actually finished making the first tortilla. It was still in the pan, and when I looked at it, it looked identical to the one I had claimed to have 8 minutes ago. I still don't know what happened that day. I couldn't help but smile as the girl continued to check me out as she walked outside with her boyfriend. I don't understand why he was so upset at hearing her ordering an angel shot off of me, but I was proud of the fact that a girl as pretty as that was interested in me. We keep smelling my cologne by Almost-Jaded. So, isn't this usually like, my wife died years ago, and every Sunday I smell her perfume? Seems like that's how this usually goes. Twice now, our apartment will suddenly smell overwhelmingly like my cologne for about a half an hour to an hour, and then it just vanishes as fast as it came. Not sure if it's paranormal, glitching, or what, but it's weird AF, and it's starting to get to me. Me and my girlfriend rent the entire basement of a house, 2 large bedrooms. We use one as our living room, a bedroom, and a hallway area between them. Our roommate/landlord is almost never home, and only ever comes downstairs to either go out to the garage or go into the laundry room at the bottom of the stairs. He hasn't been around any of the times that this has happened. I wear only one kind of cologne. It's been my trademark scent for over 20 years. Kenichi Xingon Rouge. Not exactly common, and a very distinct scent. After I got COVID, one of my unfortunate side effects was a minor change in my sense of taste and smell that seems to be permanent now. Very little changed overall, but specifically my favorite cologne now smells awful to me, like it's rancid. At one point I bought a new bottle because I thought the one I had gone bad, but the new bottle smells the same. Everyone else around me says it's still the same scent, so I kept it around because the women in my life love it, but I hardly wear it anymore because to me it smells awful now. And now I have a near empty bottle and a brand new bottle. First time it happened, girlfriend and I were both in the bedroom, door open, we're the only ones down here. Suddenly, very strong smell. She says she didn't see me put on my cologne. I said I didn't. I get up and it's much stronger in the hallway and bathroom. The new bottle is on a dresser in the bedroom, but the old one is the bathroom. Maybe it broke. Go find it. Not broken, not wet, not leaking, doesn't even smell strong on the bottle itself. The smell is clawingly strong in the hallway. Go grab my new bottle, completely intact. Also, no indications of a leak or even use. We both commented on the weirdness, and just as fast as it came on, it was gone. No more smell. It happened again just now today. It is definitely my cologne. It smells strange and vaguely rancid to me, and woodsy and sexy to her. No question that it's my cologne. It comes on strong and all at once. It's much stronger in the hall and bathroom. It goes away just as fast, about 30 to 45 minutes or so, fading now as I write this. I can't quite get my head around being haunted by my own ghost, so I really don't know what to make of this. Edit for clarification. When I said above that I hardly wear it anymore, I mean like at all. Since it smells bad to me now post-COVID, I've worn it maybe 3 times in the last 4 months, if that. Maybe 10 times in the last year, maybe rounding way up there. It isn't a lingering scent. It's what I'm trying to get to here. And update. I moved out of that house 2 years ago and have not smelled it since. No one is going to kidnap you to a different reality, the man assured his daughter, who had woken up in the middle of the night from a nightmare. They looked in each other's face and they both muttered, Your eye color has changed. I swear all truck stops are haunted or a portal to hell. By Anonymoose. I worked in the truck stop industry for about 15 years. All the following stories took place at the same location. I worked there less than 18 months. If people are interested, I have other stories at other locations, but this one had the most frequent occasions of weird stuff that happened. I was given an opportunity to help open this brand new location, and since it came with a fat raise and a promotion, I definitely accepted it. It now has been about 5 years since the location opened. I don't believe there is a single employee left that was there when we opened of the over 60 employees we hired prior to opening day. On opening day, not long after the ribbon cutting ceremony, a woman delivering flowers dropped the flowers on her sandaled foot and sliced her foot open, bleeding all over the entrance. Within a week of being open, we had water and sewage coming up through all the drains, including sewage ones outside all over the property. It had not been raining. It wasn't like a flood situation weather-wise. We had no idea what caused it to suddenly happen. And just as quickly as it happened, it went away. Plumbers were baffled. A couple months after we opened, we faced a severe storm that destroyed the high-rise interstate sign and caused a 7-hour power outage. I had sent several people home, but I had kept a couple of employees in case the power came back. As we sat in the restaurant dining room, chatting under electric lantern light, an employee who was a local resident and had lived in the town all of her life mentioned that people were a little worried when this place was announced to be built because this property had been rumored to be a Native American burial ground for years. I had zero way to prove or disprove if this was accurate, but given the events getting more serious as time went on, it makes you wonder. When the power did come back, despite the several steps I took, like unplugging all the equipment to make sure the surge wouldn't fry stuff, we lost several pieces of expensive equipment. Some of this equipment was crucial and caused major operation problems for weeks until it could be replaced. The first winter after we were opened was the coldest in years. So cold that we had to buy space heaters for the servers in the electric room so the servers wouldn't freeze. We had issues with frozen pipes, especially in the truck care center and the restaurant. 6 months after opening was the first death. A truck driver came in to take a shower in one of our shower rooms, and we had sensors on the doors to let us know how long someone had been in there. If the timer had been going for a couple of hours, we would knock on the door to see if maybe they had actually left so we could clean it for the next driver. The employee knocked on the door of the shower that had been in use for a couple of hours, and there wasn't an answer. She used the key to open the door, and the driver was on the floor. He had died of a stroke. He had been driving a semi for 30 minutes before he entered that room. The employee who had opened the door was significantly traumatized. The company did a great job of offering support for her, but she didn't last much longer after that. A few weeks later was one of the weirdest things I'd ever seen. I was working on the restaurant side of the truck stop as the restaurant manager had quit after a series of bad things had happened to her, and they asked me to move into the role temporarily. The assistant manager on the store side came over because the freakiest thing had just happened. She pulls me into the store side office and pulls up the camera to show me what happened. A small 4-door sedan pulls into the lot, but doesn't pull into the gas station side, pulls into the truck stop side where the semi-trucks pull in. He parks next to the maintenance shed, which is located adjacent to the main building, and very close to a large trash compactor. He got out of the vehicle, opens one of the doors, and pulls out a trash bag. He throws the trash bag on top of the compactor. He then gets in his car and leaves the property. I don't remember exactly how long, as she had fast-forwarded the footage, but I think it was an hour or two later he returned. He pulls back next to the compactor, climbs on top of the compactor, and chucks the bag onto the roof of the maintenance shed. He then climbs down off the compactor and gets into his car and leaves, never to return. This was when he was noticed by an employee who had been outside gathering trash to take to the compactor. The maintenance shed is more of a small building/garage. It's about 20 feet by 20 feet. If the employee had not seen him throw it up there, it probably wouldn't have been noticed maybe ever, as the building was as high as a 1-story building. Once the employee saw the individual leave, he goes into the shed, gets a ladder, and goes to get to the bag on top of the roof of the shed. He brought the bag inside the store to show the assistant manager. Inside the bag is a ton of paper. These documents list hundreds to thousands of addresses across the United States. Under each address is a specific hidden location on each property where a body could be found. No information on who the individual were, just sex and location of the individual/individuals on the properties. The locations spanned from coast to coast, but I didn't get a chance to look too deeply into them. I was really freaked out, and I thought that touching them would maybe contaminate something, So we just put what we had pulled out back in the bag. The obvious answer here was to call the police, so that's what happened next. Now, the thing about truck stops is that they are more often than not in remote locations among the interstate for obvious reasons. The town this truck stop is located in has 3 police officers in total. It is a town with less than 1,000 people, so when I saw the chief of police show up, it was because he was the highest ranking officer of the 3 in town. He hated us as truck stops being crime, and suddenly had a lot more work to do. He comes in, watches the footage, looks in the bag. And the most frustrating thing here is that he's not concerned in the slightest. He asked us what we wanted him to do about it. It probably was a prank, etc. He took the items with him, filed out a form for request for the footage, and left. My hope here is that he at least forwarded it to the FBI. A couple of weeks after this, there was a body found of a bound, nude, and recently deceased man across the street at a dump. Because it was a dump, they had no idea where the individual had originated from. Sometime in following weeks was the second death on the property. It was a driver that had died in his truck. Somewhere in the middle of this, we had another severe storm and the interstate high-rise was destroyed again. We had another weird incident involving abandoned things, but this one had a resolution. A driver came in to show that someone had left ratchet straps and small children clothes folded up neatly next to a diesel pump. The combination of the items was alarming for me, so I got on the camera system and called the police. I was able to find the truck that had left the items, and luckily I got the one amazing police officer in the town this time. She actually did her job and followed up with me to let me know that she had found the driver and called him. He had his kid in the truck for a while for summer break, but it had ended, so he brought her home with her mom and wasn't going to see his kid for a while. So when he was cleaning his truck, he had these clothes and some straps he didn't need and thought someone else could use the items. He didn't think about the combination of the two raising eyebrows, and he honestly was really grateful that someone would be worried and followed up in case. A couple months after the first year mark, the state DOT had to shut down the on-off ramp to the interstate exit, started to collapse, and they were worried that the overpass could collapse as well. We had nearly zero business for weeks as construction crews rebuilt the ramps and repaired the overpass. It was during this time that I earned a promotion to general manager role and was moved to a different location. I kept in touch for a while, especially with my former boss and the assistant manager. The incidents continued. A couple months after I left, there were 2 major incidences, but I can't remember what came first. One involving an individual that entered the building with a machete. He was aggressive. The employees were terrified. I wish I hadn't deleted it, but there is footage of a state troopers coming in with AKs and drop-kicking the guy. Unsure where this person came from as he walked, and this location was 10 to 15 miles from the nearest town. The second was a customer attacking a teenage cashier because he didn't get the customer's lotto ticket correct and got into a brawl with the maintenance guy who came to the kid's defense. Slowly over time, I lost touch with them and they both left the location, so I stopped getting the stories. I don't know if they are continuing. Haunted? Portal to hell? I don't know. But what I do know is now I avoid truck stops like the plague. The smell of bleach makes my nose burn as I clean the crime scene, needing to erase any trace that my wife was here. If I failed to cover up her kills, I would be next. My Sub-Story by Sydney.
This happened to me back in the 80s when I was working at the bank in Richmond, Virginia. My friend Marty and I would eat lunch together most days. We worked at a data center where there wasn't much around us except a sub shop across the street. We would get our food and walk back and eat in our lunchroom. Most of the time, we would get a 12-inch sub and split it between us. On this particular day, we decided to go get our normal 12-inch tuna sub and split it. We purchased a sub like we did all the other times and brought it back. We both took our half of the sub. I was the first to take a bite. After I bit into the sub, it started crunching, and it wasn't lettuce. Marty was looking at me so funny. I spit it out and ran my fingers through it. All through the sub were tiny pieces of glass. That freaked us out. I'm so glad I didn't swallow it. We got both of our halves of our sub and took them back over to the sub shop. We walked in and she looked surprised to see us back. We told her what we found in our food and she thought it was so funny. She asked if we wanted another sub and we said, no, we want our money back. She went back and got our manager and he acted nonchalant about the whole thing. Well, that put Marty and me into revenge kind of mode. I could have really been injured. We got our money back and went back to the office. We looked up the number for the health department and Marty called them. She explained what we had just been through and they told us they would check it out. A couple days go by and the health department gets back to us. They went to the shop and they were using a cracked crock pot to store the tuna in. Well, they gave them 24 hours to get a new crock pot, and they needed to discard the tuna immediately. When they went back to check if they had complied, they were still using the same crock pot. I guess they thought it was still a joke. They ended up getting closed down, and it turned into a car lot. But it's so scary what could have happened if I swallowed that glass. Well, this is my scary sub-story. May not be the scariest, but it sure as hell freaked me out.
My wife poses on the bed taking a mirror selfie to see me in lingerie she bought for when I come home from deployment. If you look closely at the window behind her, you can see my eyes peeking through the blinds. I viewed the property of a man who murdered his previous tenant, by Fox-Mulder. When I finished uni, I moved back home until I found a job. As soon as I could afford it, I set up a profile on the website Spare Room. I was contacted by James, who had a room for rent on the outskirts of town I worked in. It sounded good, but he wanted to talk on the phone before inviting me to view it. We had a chat one evening, and it turned out we had some things in common. We both enjoyed fitness, particularly swimming, and we were movie buffs. By the end of the call, it had felt like chatting to an old friend, and I was looking forward to meeting him. James didn't specify his age, but I assumed he was in his 20s like me. When I went to view the property, he actually came out of the house next door to greet me. When he introduced himself as James, I was pretty shocked. He was at least 50, dressed quite conservatively, and looked like he was wearing a hairpiece. If he had told me on the phone he was in his early 20s, I wouldn't have questioned it. I went ahead with the viewing, but I'd already decided I didn't want to rent a room from him. I wanted to live with people who were a similar age to me. I was also put off by the house decor, which looked like it hadn't changed since the 80s. When I viewed the bedroom, it looked like it was occupied by a young person. There were several pairs of trainers and a game console. James said the previous tenant, Mark, was moving to London for work. Coincidentally, my name is Mark too.
James invited me to sit in the living room after the house tour. I didn't want to be rude, so I did. He explained that he cared for his elderly mother, who lived next door. Then he started complimenting my style, saying I looked cool. He proceeded to put his hand on my leg, which made me feel very uncomfortable. When he asked if I was interested in the room, I said I had other properties to view, but would be in touch. I then made an excuse to leave. Everything about him screamed red flag. I just wanted to get out of that house. As soon as I was back in my car, I called my mom to tell her how freaked out I was, and I absolutely would not be living there. James texted me a few days later to ask if I thought any more about moving in. I lied and said I found somewhere closer to town. I did eventually find something with some other young professionals, which turned out to be great. Some months later, our town was shocked by the news that a man's body had been found in the fields on the outskirts. He was later identified as Mark. I didn't think much of it until I saw that the murder suspect was his landlord, James. The same James whose house I viewed. I saw him on the news and got instant chills. He was later convicted of Mark's murder. Contrary to popular belief, vampires can have children, and we learn from childhood all the ways of vampire kin, from the best blood to drink to all the dangers we must avoid. Today, I accidentally stepped into the sunlight, but nothing happened. Helen's Bridge by Only One Morgan 22. It was right around this time of year 3 years ago when my current boyfriend and I first met. A few weeks later, went camping on Halloween weekend in the woods right next to the supposedly haunted Helen's Bridge near Tunnel Road in Asheville, North Carolina. It was a beautiful spot up there with so much overlook, and with the bridge being right there with all the stories we had been told about being haunted, true or not, it made it just scary enough for a little thrill. I wish I could say Helen's Bridge, as we had planned, was the scariest part about the weekend. Not even close. It was Halloween, and we were planning on going to a show that night. T, my boyfriend, and I planned with each other that I was going to get ready at camp while he walked into town to get some drinks and something to eat before we left. If he didn't make it back before dark, it would not be more than 30 minutes after that. I didn't have any problems with that. I had a lot of experience solo camping and was pretty woodsy. The most that would spook me would be a bear if one happened to wander up. We had chosen an area that was super secluded and more backcountry sort of camping, so it'd just be us for the whole weekend. More romantic that way. Like usual, it didn't take me long to get ready, and it was super peaceful up there. I knew it was going to be around 45 or so before he got back, so I decided to read a book in the tent with the door open for some air. 10 minutes into reading, I heard a fairly large branch break a couple of feet behind my tent. I had learned how to gauge how large of an animal it might have been in the past by the sound they make walking through the woods. This one seems big. A bear. It wasn't quite pitch black out yet, so I got out of my tent, turned around to shout at it to get it to run away. And there stood a huge, probably 6'5", 6'6" man. Completely taken off guard and pretty nervous about the situation. Without thinking, I said hi. He said hello and walked closer. Looking back, I wish I had not been so friendly, but it had been habit. I thought he had just set up camp probably somewhere nearby and would be doing a quick introduction and retreat.
I was horribly mistaken. I didn't know if he was saying things trying to get a rise out of me, scare me. I don't know what parts were true and still don't. He immediately started saying something like, "What's a pretty little thing like you doing alone in the woods all by herself? Don't you know bad things happen to pretty little girls like you?" I ignored him and said I wasn't alone. My boyfriend was right down the hill going to the bathroom and would be right back. I hoped this would cause him to leave. But instead he said, "What if I told you that I've been watching you all for a few days now, and I know you're lying? He's gone for a minute," he said. "What are you hiding out in the woods? I'm hiding because I raped my girlfriend's sister. I can tell that bothers you. It bothers you a lot, doesn't it?" My heart sank completely, and with a complete loss for words, I'm fairly certain my stomach was going to fall out of my ass. I was shaking and was hoping he couldn't tell because of it getting darker. I wanted to appear annoyed and calm, just annoyed at his existence. I rolled my eyes, grabbed my water bottle to give my brain a second to figure out how to tell him to get the fuck away from me. Maybe just that. Yep, let's go with that. When I looked up to tell him, he had somehow, extremely quietly, gotten significantly closer to me. Close enough to punch me in the face, cause me to fall back. I was probably knocked out for only a second. When I opened my only one eye I could, he punched me again and tried to get on top of me. Terrified, I rolled away and just kept rolling till I got up and started running. To where? I didn't know. I had no light and no shoes and no phone. And it was a good mile or so before any neighborhood. I was screaming and I could hear him screaming, chasing after me. "You're dead when I catch you. You're so fucked when I catch you." I got to a car and hid under it. I didn't see him after that. I was too scared to go anywhere near there, especially at night. So I asked someone in a house I knocked on to use their phone to call the police and my boyfriend. Ironically enough, turns out the monster's name was Jason. Halloween got extremely too real that year. "Alright, miss, if you just stand right here, the AI will scan you and tell you whether you go to college, into the workforce, or enter one of the alternative pathways," said the government employee, pulling me onto the platform. My heart sank when output on the screen flashed breeder. And now the stories have come to an end. If you're still awake, well, I hope you fall asleep shortly. And the sounds that you hear in the background are going to take center stage for no more than 30 minutes to help you fall asleep or stay asleep. But if you are awake and want to hear more stories, I do have playlists for that as well. Sleep tight and don't let 42 bite.